Miss Andrews, are you okay?
Definitely not. I'm actress Valerie Alline, and I play Amy Andrews in the new film, The Empty Space.
It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
A violent attack leaves her without her boyfriend, her home, her sense of self. Amy, like so many of us, suffers from mental illness. As she tries to get her life back together, she's haunted by terrifying visions that may or may not be real. Empty Space goes beyond the slasher and takes you deep into the void. We hope you join us as our film premieres on streaming. We also hope that not only are you frightened, but you gain some insight into a serious problem that affects so many people, including the filmmakers.
I know how it sounds. What if it's real?
The Empty Space, a terrifying new vision from director Andrew Hara.
Welcome back, guys. I know you thought I was going to tell you to watch The Empty Space, but I'm not. I'm going to tell you to watch Clown Show, the newest short by Andrew Hara. It's on my YouTube page, not this one. There's another one. There's probably a link at the bottom if I remember it. But welcome back. We missed last week, but guess what? The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. One time, my ex-girlfriend cheated on me with that song, and then she sung it to me, and I didn't find out till months later. So anyway, we're back on the and really the reason we wanted to do The Exorcist is I was never going to watch The Heretic unless we did it on this podcast, but B is because of these two. That's why we kind of waited, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense, for William to come back. So what we're doing is, for anyone who didn't know, they wanted to make a prequel to The Exorcist, and then they made it. They called Paul Schrader, who did famously The Taxi Driver, who famously made the movie The Canyon, starring James Dean. And he made it. They sent him off. He got Peter Skarsgård or whatever, and then they saw it and they're like, "This is garbage." So they scrapped the entire project. They hired Rennie Harlan, famous for Die Hard 2, which, if you know Die Hard 2, you know it's exactly like The Exorcist. And so they're like, go make your movie. And so he kept a few of the actors, I think. He kept some of the sets. He kept the basic gist of the story, which we won't get into until Josh explains it. And then he changed pretty much anything else. And so they released it. It was a massive critical and financial failure. So then they're like, fuck it, we don't even care about this franchise anymore. And so they just released the other one. It's like one of the only things other than the Snyderverse where you can see what the company or what the studio wanted, and you can see what the auteur wanted, and kind of compare them. And that's where we are. So we wanted to cover that because it's super interesting. And also, I know what you're thinking. 4 bombs in a row. Someone give Danny McBride $400 million to make a new sequel. Well, guess what, guys? That one's in theaters right now. But we're not talking about that one. We'll see that one next year as soon as it gets out.
We're not braving the theaters for that one.
I'm not risking COVID for that. I will risk it for Killers of the Flower Moon.
Oh yeah.
But welcome back, William. William, before we start, because when we did Exorcist 2, we kind of talked a little bit about our perception of the first movie. And since we've done 2 and 3, you can, if you've seen those, you can talk about them too. But give us a little bit about your thoughts on the original Exorcist, and if you've seen 1 or 2.
So I've only ever seen the original Exorcist. I've seen maybe the beginning or some parts maybe of Dominion, but not enough to even comment on it.
Okay.
But I mean, The Exorcist was always kind of legendarily the scariest thing of all time. And my family, when I was raised religious, Baptist, so that was that was on the menu for horror stuff for me at the time. But when I finally saw it, I was kind of it's it was okay. It didn't really scare me. I'd seen worse at that time. But I feel like watching it as an adult and later on, I can kind of appreciate it more as a film. But if I'm being totally honest, it's not my favorite franchise. I don't get excited about, I don't know, Exorcist movies, except I'm pretty excited to do these 2 back to back. And I have seen the one that we're about to review, and I liked it when I saw it. But I was I don't know, 13 maybe. So yeah, I don't know. The Exorcist is I like it, but it's not my franchise. I would say.
I will say, if you're a 13-year-old boy, this movie is gonna rock your fucking socks off. And we'll talk
Yeah,
about
this
it.
one.
Yeah.
This was way scarier to me than the original Exorcist when I saw it.
Really. And so like again, I mean I'm religious. The movie works better if you're religious, I think. I don't think that's a
Yeah,
crazy thing to
you just
say.
understand more of it. I think
Yeah.
you get more of the references.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I can say one thing, if I had to choose between The Exorcist One and Constantine, Constantine wins for sure.
really?
Yes, sir.
That's a bold take.
I know it's a hot take.
Now, are you saying that as someone raised religious or someone who still has the sensibilities of a 14-year-old boy?
Bro.
A religious 14-year-old boy.
Or are you saying that as a man trapped between good and light who has to make deals with the devil to stave off
Well,
lung
I don't like to
cancer?
think of good and evil as like an entity. It's something that's just born inside of each individual person.
Yeah.
That's a Stellan Skarsgård quote for all of y'all out there.
Perfect. So, okay, let's get into it. That was a perfect segue. The Exorcist, the beginning, directed by horror master Rennie Harland. Of such films as Driven, Cliffhanger, Cutthroat Island, and Legend of Hercules. Those scary ass movies.
And Deep Blue Sea, Deep Blue
And
Sea
Deep
too.
Blue. Okay, yeah, he has
Did we
done
do that
horror.
on the? Did we do
To
this
be
on
fair,
podcast? Did we do the Deep Blue Sea on podcast?
we haven't yet.
Okay.
Guys. Don't worry, it's coming. Oh, he did Mine Hunters. That's one of my favorite movies that I remember when I was 13.
He was like honestly as influential as Steven Spielberg to all of us.
Yeah, as
We
a
just had no idea who he
yeah,
was.
because his name's Rennie Harlan. But isn't he making Yeah, he's making the Strangers, um, the
Oh,
Strangers new
reboot.
one.
Yeah,
So
what a weird remake. Why?
The Strangers
no,
trilogy.
it's not a remake. Yeah, it's a remake trilogy. He's gonna make three. He already made three of them, and they're all coming out next year. And Andrew loves gimmicks.
Yeah, what the fuck?
You're finally going to find out the origins of the three people in Mass that you don't really know anything about.
You don't really know what they're about. Yeah, so great times, guys. But so yes, it was directed. It stars you guys. It was written by William Wisher. Yeah, he wishes for a better box office. It stars Stellan Skarsgård, father of Alex Skarsgård, part of the Skarsgård family, and that's about it. Everyone else is kind of unknown. It stars Alan Ford from Snatch, and it was distracting because every time I saw him, I saw his character in Snatch.
I know. He's like
We
a
need
big
to.
bar somewhere.
It's the
That
nurse
is so
is Isabella Scorupco, my first crush because she was in Goldeneye, the movie.
GoldenEye, yeah.
Oh yeah,
She's the redhead, yeah, in
Yeah.
Goldeneye. She's not
Yeah.
redheaded in this, so it took me a second to be like, how do I know her? So
yeah.
What is her name in GoldenEye?
Natalia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was just trying to go to work, man. And then her day got fucked up. At her weird job at a military base in the snow. Her casual job.
Just
Yes.
clocking in.
Good time, but yeah. So and it's that's about it. It came out and I already clicked out of it. I apologize, guys. 2004. Josh, why don't you take a trip down memory lane and tell us what this movie's about, but only from the POV of that little monkey kid.
It's according to him, just shit's wild. I guess shit's wild.
Yeah.
Whoever you
I
are.
don't think so because the monkey never seemed like he never did it. He was just always there, like having fun. Everyone else is dying around him, and the monkey was just like, whatever. This happens every couple of years. I don't care.
Okay, so in this movie, children are dying by the bucket load, and only a priest who is also Indiana Jones and an extremely horny nurse / Holocaust survivor can put it right, kind of.
What?
That's
pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the movie.
I don't remember anything else happening. But yeah, okay. So, what are your overall thoughts on Exorcist?
I mean,
and also it's Father Marin is played by Max van Schreiden. That's that
Yeah.
character.
That was cool. That was like way cool. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember watching this movie in theaters, and yeah, I think it's fun. It's kind of gross. It's like it's not great. It has really weird CGI, but like like CGI of like just establishing shots of Cairo, but just like one
Yeah,
thing, and it's like, why did you not just go to Cairo?
I
But
know.
it's like it's gross and it's not that scary, but it's like fun and kind of like action packed. And Stellan
It,
Skarsgård is like always good, so
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like
yeah, he's
silly but
well.
fun.
I don't. To me, there's this almost, and this will definitely probably kind of translate more with both movies as a whole. But he almost seems a little hostile in this movie, like the Harrison Ford Blade Runner theatrical cut where he did not want to do the narration, so he like really
Oh yeah,
like no sold it. This movie has some of that where you're like, is he like pissed that he had to do these reshoots?
oh,
He has
maybe
this
that
like
works for his character. Who's
See,
yeah,
just
he
so
almost
over
has
the
this
top.
anger to him that's
I would
yeah.
say it's very much the opposite because, like, everyone. One of the weirdest things about this movie, and I liked it. I like this movie, but one of the weird things is how non-responsive everyone is to like this shit happening to. And if you like
Oh,
compare it to
that's
the
true.
original, like,
It's like they've all
there's
seen
a
it
kid who gets ripped apart by hyenas,
in front of
and like
everyone.
everyone's just kind of like the next day they're like, "Well, that fucking
They
sucked,
really
huh?" And
got
it's like, what do you mean? He got ripped apart by a hyena? Like, and every reaction is like that except for a once or twice. But like the weirdest shit, like there's a guy in this played by the guy from Snatch, and he's such a pervert. And he's constantly talking. Like at one point, he shows up in the nurse's or the doctor's bed, and he's like, "You're gonna give me what I want," and she's like, "Get out of here," and he's like, "Fine." I'll see you
Yeah,
later. And it's like, what do you mean fine? Like, why is this guy not under arrest?
I
What the
know.
fuck?
And a kid even walks in during that scene, and they're just like, "Kid,
Yeah,
go away. You don't need to
yeah.
see this.
Yeah, I think
Not
there's
run, get help."
cuz this movie, I mean this movie's it's almost weird in that it's almost structured like they're like, okay, let's slowly roll out the plot for 30 minutes. And then it's almost like a fan cam of a movie where it's just hard cuts to like new locations and like revelations and people dying. Like,
Well, I want to say this is one of the worst edited movies I've ever seen. Like, I mean, I like this movie, but there's like, okay, so let's start from the beginning. So at the very beginning of this movie, it's like my favorite part. Is like the part I always remember because it's like this warrior, and he's like trying to get the little piece of head from the Exorcist, which in the original wasn't supposed to be like a super valuable piece. It was just supposed to represent the devil. Like it wasn't supposed to be something that they keep finding, but it doesn't matter. So they find it, and then they like he can't get it, and then like it zooms out, and there's like all these dead bodies. But the cool part is there's all these people that have been crucified upside down, like to signify the devil. And like as the movie's panning out, you like expect them to end on like a close up of a guy's face, and he's like upside down, and he's like screaming, But instead, the movie like ends on like a shot where everything's out of frame, and you just kind of see like someone's legs and then the battlefield. And it's like I kind of feel like that's a good metaphor for the entire movie, where it's like, you know what, you guys got a good idea. You didn't really pull off the execution, like even a little bit, but you got me hooked, baby.
you know what it is to me too, like the editing is, they do mess up, but without getting into spoilers yet, there's a scene where his light goes out and he has to relight it, and then it's like, oh, the demon's going to be right there. Easiest jump scare shot in history, but the way they edit it is so bad that it's like, oh, like why did you cut to a completely new angle 2 seconds after he turned the light on? Like it was just such a weird, like, oh man, you just have her behind him when he turns the light on. It's
Right.
so like right there. Do
All
the
the
right
shocking
shot.
stuff is definitely just like gross images. Like that's like where like most of like the fear comes from. Like definitely not like any sort of like camera work or editing work at all. It's just like some shit just like looks really gross, and so it's like, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of child death in this movie. Too much, I would say. There's a part I was taking notes and I wrote, there's a
Well,
lot of
before you
child
get
death.
into that, I just want to say that, like, okay, so the movie is Father Marin has lost his faith after World War II, and so someone hires. He's like becoming Indiana Jones for some reason because that's what priests do, and so then someone like this guy who literally looks like he walked out of a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. He's like, I want to hire you to go find this dig, and then
I think that guy was Spock's dad in the new Star Trek movies.
it was fucking.
Yeah.
I was like, I've never seen that motherfucker before.
Someone looked at that guy and they're like, get this hideous guy into alien
Yeah.
makeup. He's already there. But yeah, I was watching him. I was like obsessed with him. So
Yeah.
then they're like, so then Father Marin, they're like, hey, there's this church that they found in the desert, and he's like, they couldn't have found it in Africa. They found it in Africa. They're like, they couldn't have found it in Africa because they like the Christianity didn't hit Africa until blah blah blah. And he's like, well, it's there. Go check it out, see if it's real. And so Father Marin like goes there, and he's not a father at this point, which doesn't really come up as much as you think. And so he has to figure out why the church is there and if there's a curse behind the church. And soon he's going to find out whether there's a devil and whether he's beginning. So yeah, so that's the basic plot. So he and like okay, and I want to say this movie was filmed at a time where you could do a lot with CGI, but it was expensive as shit. And Rennie Harland is like, I don't care. We'll just stretch out this budget because like every time they're not in Africa, it looks like they're in CGI paper mache. Like there's a scene where he's walking away.
Oh yeah, he's in like Rome. It's like the guy falling in RoboCop, but he's just walking down a street. You're like, come on, man! You couldn't have filmed this on a real street. Yeah,
I know.
It's not in the Middle East. I don't know. Go somewhere cheaper, I guess, or go to fucking Arizona. Like I don't know.
right.
Do anything.
Yeah, anywhere else, like go. And
like,
then, not only that, but like when they get to Africa,
yeah,
Africa has like blue skies. The ground sometimes is green, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's purple. Like I don't know what, and I kind of like this by the way. It kind of feels like every time they go to the like church, it's on a different planet. Like it looks like there's legit a scene where he's like digging the graves later, and it looks like he's in Mars from Total Recall. Like that's how red it is. And I was like, okay, you know, like what?
It's like Castlevania lighting when you go to the new stage, and you're like, okay, now the sky's on fire.
Right,
like, all right. It's just things get more evil as he progresses. But yeah, no, it is funny how his faith does not really. It really comes up at the very beginning and very end, and otherwise he is like generic action movie man, you know, for the most part.
Yeah, that was to me that was a weird thing.
It's mostly about him. Like it's not really like I was trying to think of like, is this like what kind of a horror movie is this? But it's really about the father. Like the devil and like the demon don't really matter that much until like the very end. It just kind of it pushes him along more than like he pushes the demon along. Like it's weirdly a character study more than it is like a monster movie.
And you know what I realized watching this movie is it's kind of funny because if you look at like if you look at the original Exorcist, like yes, the main character Karras is a priest, but so little of it has to do with religion. It's like his job is a priest, and so you're following him as his job. But even like he's never explaining like anything. When you see him at mass, and I think that's why Catholics like are drawn to that movie and are scared by it, because we understand what's happening when he's like doing the mass, but nobody, if you're not in the religion, you're just like it's mumbo jumbo.
Right. Yeah, that was probably I didn't even know like what most of the like rituals are and stuff.
Right. And so, but this one and every single sequel after really is so honed in on the religious aspect. I think because more of the reputation of The Exorcist and the actual movie. But I think this is maybe one of the only ones that works because, well, and it's tough because like he goes to this church and like it's buried underground and he's like wiping off like the dirt like how archaeologists do. He's like this church, it's 15,000 years old. It should be weathered, but it's not. It's almost like they buried it right after they built it. Yeah.
I love like he's like the cross was broken from this other broken piece of wood. It's just like
yeah, good job.
That's fucking right.
There's only one other place the cross is gonna come from, but nobody was even questioning.
I also do enjoy like this church isn't because like in the other ones it's like, oh, maybe at some point a church will be like desecrated or something, but it's like in this one it's like the second they get in the church it's like, oh no, this is evil. Like this is the most evil church I've ever seen.
No doubt about it.
This is clearly built for Satan. Like
yeah, but I kind of like that it was
It's like in the middle of nowhere where it shouldn't be. Like I guess Christians weren't there at the time or something. He's like, yeah, be here, and he's like, well, it fucking is. So go look at it. And then he's like, well, it's actually a cage for a demon that y'all fucked up.
Well, and to me, one of the funniest, like, one of the things with this movie is that it is like I'm so intrigued by. Like, I like the movie; it's fine, but like all the stuff that they kind of do, I feel like it's so much. Like, there's so much history there. Like, there's a church that's been buried underground. There might not be like it might be the Church of Satan that they've never found, and everyone who goes there starts to go crazy or die. And like the previous guy who was the previous archaeologist literally went insane, and he's like in an institution, and like everyone there is plagued. There used to be a plague that came and it kills all the locals, and the locals have like gone back and they've like resorted to a more primitive form of their religion where they're doing human sacrifices and stuff. And like so much of this movie is just Marin like talking to the girl and the girl being super horny for no fucking reason. Every line I was watching it with a friend, I told her, I was like, why is she so fucking horny? I mean, we find out by the end. But I don't know if that was part of it or they're just like, just play it real horny. You're like so horny.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, do what I did in the Bond movie. You've got it."
Yeah.
Play it the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very. But like I said, it's almost a movie where it's not really him figure. Well, I guess I don't know. It's weird because it's like things just kind of happen so quickly that it almost like rushes through plot. Like it's like they just like children start dying a lot in very different ways. I'd say there's a good dozen children dead by the end of this.
Well,
it is unpleasant.
Honestly, I missed it was only kids dying until just now.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that.
Well, and I noticed it this time too. Like this movie does not give a shit about kids dying, which is funny because like the original Exorcist, that's the whole thing.
Right.
But one of the things, like they go into the church the first time, and like it's Father Marin, and he's in there like looking through it, and he's like, "Oh my god, this church is evil," and he has a guide who's there. And then, like, the guide is, like, standing at the gate. And, like, of course, it's underground, so the only light is coming from the doorway. And, like, then he realizes there's that big shadow over him, you know? And, like, and you'd think that, like he's, like, standing there, and then you're just like, oh, my God. And you think that, like, that's the perfect time to do a jump cut or a jump scare. And they kind of do. But then it's revealed that it's another priest who's helping. But, like, they don't actually do the jump scare part. It just goes from him looking up to immediate cut to the reveal. And it's like they forgot to shoot the jump scare, but they still wanted to have the scare in there. So they just cut whatever they could. And they're like, and like, instead of showing like this big monster over encompassing him and him being scared, it just cuts to Father Marin being like, what?
Yeah,
it's not work at all.
It's very work printy of like a movie where you're like, oh, they didn't quite have everything, but this is most of the footage. Yeah,
like they sent the wrong cut to theaters, and they're just like, well, fuck it. We've like gone through so much.
Okay, guys, here's a weird thing. I don't know why this is in there. In the church, they have to come in through the roof, and so they come in through the roof. And then the Star of David is on the roof of the church.
Oh, like the 6 point. I think that might just be like an attempt at like a
maybe it's all religion
design. Yeah, I think it's very.
I was like, what the fuck?
Because it doesn't really come back. I did be like, oh, that's a little weird, but it's also like.
Well, and like
this movie doesn't really follow through on much.
This opportunity, like there's a scene where it shows like all the angels and they're pointing. You know how like if you see a statue of an angel, he's usually pointing his staff up, like they're standing in formation. But they're all pointing their staffs down, like they're ready for war. And I thought that was super interesting and like kind of signifying that this church, even if it's a good church, it's like there to fight evil. So there's a lot of evil there. But then every other time we cut to those statues, they're just standing normal and they don't ever comment on the fact that they changed or that.
Oh, their spears weren't pointed down anymore?
No, they're all just standing like that again. There's like one that's pointing his spear down, but the rest of them are just standing normal. And I was like, oh shit, why did that happen? And they just don't ever tell you.
Weren't they talking about like how like the spears were pointed down? Like, wasn't that to like keep the demon at bay? Or did the demon do that? Did the demon point the spears down, or did
they say that that in religion the spear should be pointing up, which again we don't. I mean, I know Catholics have a lot of rules, but that's not a rule.
I guess we also wouldn't have to learn that rule since we weren't really messing with statues or spears.
Yeah.
See,
That's
that
true.
is like tricky because I do think like there is like a good idea of like the ambiguity of ritual of like because then like a lot of times too like a lot of the stuff is them being like, oh, obviously it's these like evil African savages. Like that's what all the British people think. And it's like,
Right.
and their stuff. And it's like, no, it's like this otherworldly demon doing this. And it's like they kind of play with that, but not that much to where it's very like, oh, you're kind of making a point, but then it doesn't
Mhm.
really like
It's
kind
just
of
it just
pull
points
into
to
that.
the point. It's like, so this is something that has happened.
Yeah,
Right, and then
yeah.
it just kind of goes by the wayside because at the end of
Yeah.
the movie,
I completely forgot that they kill more. I was thinking about how many kids they do kill a lot. I will say, yeah.
no, I wrote a note. I was like, they've killed a lot of kids, and then after that, 4 more kids died. After I wrote that note, I was like, don't show the fetus covered in like maggots. That's too
Oh,
much,
I forgot
guys.
about the feed. You know,
That
it's a
was
good
the girl
movie
who
when
went
you
to
forget
hockey.
about.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
maggots in this movie. Like, holy shit, there are
this
so many
It's
movie,
maggots.
and the whole time I was watching, I was like, "Is The Exorcist gross? Like, why did they think this movie should be so gross?"
that
You know?
like they cut to his time of World War II, and just without context, it's just a Nazi executing like children.
What
Like
Yeah,
again?
over and over again.
Talking about executions. Okay, so he's just sitting in his room, and then he starts thinking of the flashback to the Nazis, and so then he'll just stand up, and then he just thinks about it again. Like you know how in movies, like they'll wake up and they'll be like, "Oh shit, that was
From a
freaky,"
dream. Yeah.
but in this one, he's just already awake, and then anytime, and that's what I'm saying. Like the reactions, like anytime he's like thinking of these Nazi men. They forced Father Marin to like pick who was gonna die, but at first he didn't want to because he's a priest, and so they started executing kids to like motivate him, quote unquote, you know. But he's like, they show him shoot a kid, and he just stands up and he's like, I was like, you should have more of a reaction to remembering that a child was murdered in your prison.
like I said,
They
this
also
is one
like
of those
they
things where it's yeah, you could clearly see it's like, all right, this was cut around, you know, like
yeah.
there was more to this, you know.
I wonder if they were like relying on like talking about like cutting around. Like I wonder if they just like had extra footage from the first go round that they were
Yeah.
literally just like fix everything in post. Like I wonder if
What?
that's like where some of the editing stuff like I wonder if this might
What?
have fucked up. Like they tried to fix it in post and they were just like, oh actually we don't have that footage. And
It's
like you know like
curious. It'll be curious to watch the next one because, like, I
yeah.
because it could also be the case where it's like, hey, man, we got the Nazi set. You got to include Nazis in this movie. Like, you cannot not use that set.
Right.
You know, or like, hey, man, we got the hyenas CGI model ready. You got to
Yeah,
put
yeah.
them.
So
You
yeah,
know how
You
because
got to
much
put every
hyena
hyena in that.
CGI we spent? Come
the
on.
hyenas are like sometimes dangerous and like sometimes not. Like the
Yeah.
part where like when you see hyenas, like the first time you see them, like they kill people, and then there's a part where the father is fucking digging graves up like for
Yeah.
hours, and there's hyenas like running at him, but he still digs up like 3 graves. No problems with the hyenas, minus like their noise, like they were distracting. So that was weird.
Yeah.
Also,
They like.
with the
Oh, go ahead.
kids in whenever they were showing like Father Marin like executing or having to choose who gets executed, the little girl who gets shot, like they show her like miles away in another scene, like doing something else,
Yeah.
and they show her whole journey running up to get executed. So you're like, who is this girl? Who is she? Like, why is she relevant to the story at all?
Yeah.
But like she just has all this like weird introduction and backstory, but her whole point is that she got shot. She's not related to anybody in the movie. She's not like
Right, right. It's
related
just
to the
his. I
doctor who
think
he
it's.
talked about.
I do think it's supposed to be his like survivor's guilt over,
Oh,
but
absolutely,
it's
yeah.
not really depicted well. But
No,
it's the
super
idea
weird.
is there. I do think though the movie, I actually do really like the ending. Not as an Exorcist prequel, because if you really think about the tone and message of this movie, it doesn't link up to the Exorcist at all. But as
Yeah,
like an insane Evil Dead style battle, like I
Yeah.
enjoy the
Okay.
ending a
Well,
lot.
and because there's like a so the doctor is helping Father Marion, and she's also being harassed by the guy from Snatch. But there's a scene where the guy from Snatch is dead, and then Father Marion comes in, and he's like, "I have to go to the dig site. Will you be okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay," and he just leaves. But she wasn't in danger before. She hasn't been in danger since then. It's just like I don't like. It's like they knew they needed that scene where he like shows that he's going out of his way to protect her,
Right.
but they hadn't set anything up. But they're just like, I mean, we just film it. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out later. And then okay, so I'll say okay, so they think this kid Joseph has been possessed, and like Father Marin doesn't believe it. And again, like in the original, they spent all that time showing like all the other methods they tried. They do this a little bit, but it's weird. But anyway,
It's
so
expressive.
like Father Marin gives him like a toy or something, and then his brother, who you don't know is his brother up until that point. They didn't establish that until after he's murdered. But his brother's like, I have it. I'm going to like, it's not yours. I'm gonna take it away. And then like a bunch of hyenas come and tear that kid apart. And like you even see the kid like crawling up. And this kid is like 12. He's not like a 16-year-old
Dude,
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
for like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
The hyenas stop attacking, and then they go back and attack.
viscerally unpleasant.
He's
Yeah.
crawling away, and the hyenas keep pouncing on him. They're tearing him limb from limb, literally. They
Yeah.
drag him away, and I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, what was
We
the
got
point
2
of
shotgun
showing them?
rounds to scare him off, and they're just like, "What are we gonna do?"
They literally shoot one, and they don't stop. And they're like, those hyenas were possessed. Like, fuck yeah, they were, bro. What the hell was that? And
that
then,
was-
but then,
The brother's not upset. The brother doesn't even give a shit. He's like, "I don't know." And they're like,
Yeah.
"It's fine. You rest." Your brother got fucking murdered.
I'll tell you what, I fucking saw that movie yesterday, and that hyena scene is still with me.
Yeah.
They, even with the bad CGI, it did not matter after a while because you're just watching a kid get torn apart. In the movie, they move on so fast, like without.
You know, I remember this being pretty like incomprehensible in the theaters, but I remember like having a good time. And like
Yeah.
I remember like a lot of the scenes and stuff. And like watching it again, I was like, this is almost the exact same experience.
Yeah, that's what
It's like it's gotta let it go. It's kind of just like a gory slideshow, like at a bar.
It's very B movie. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
very like it's
Truly.
like if you didn't know what The Exorcist was, but you just knew it's about a demon messing with people, you'd think it was like this, like
Yeah.
because you only have modern horror sensibilities like in
Also,
your head.
I do want to say, like, imagine you saw this first and then you loved it, and you're like, let me see the original Exorcist.
Right. It's like an actual drama. It's like
You'd fucking be so bored.
But
Like, what
here's
the
the
fuck are
thing,
the
like,
hyenas?
if you
yeah, 'cause
somehow
this is what I
saw
loved
this,
as a kid.
if you saw this and skipped to The Exorcist to The Heretic, you'd be like, all right, the tone kind of matches.
Right, like,
this,
good job,
movie's,
man.
this movie's insane. in the same
Right
way.
away, yeah.
Way
But
more
I-
visceral.
I think incomprehensible but enjoyable is like the best way to describe this movie, because it's almost like you're like, hell yeah, guys, you're doing it. Like I can't, like, it's funny how religious this movie is. Oh, and okay, so then there's another scene where they show you more of the World War II flashback. This is right before the guy gets torn apart by hyenas, and by guy I mean child. And
Yeah.
so you see a bunch of kids getting murdered in World War II, and Marin's like freaking out. And then it immediately cuts to the monkey on the wheel being like, woo, 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 woo. And I was like,
Yeah.
why would you make that cut?
It's so
Just a
It
disrespectful
just-
ass movie. Like, holy fuck.
Yeah. It's like the fucking editor was like, fuck Rennie Harlan, I'm going to put all these things, and he's going to have all these notes. He's going to make me change it. And then Rennie Harlan was like, that's good. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, fuck.
it's a lot like you know, so when they did reshot like 90% of Solo, so
Yeah.
then like randomly you'd be like, oh, I could clearly tell this is a different movie by the tone of this like 1 5-minute scene. This movie has a lot of stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will also say, so they're in the original Exorcist, in the Father Marin scene, actually, when he goes in Iraq and he finds the statue and they stand off face to face. So in the original, it's supposed to be Lucifer and kind of a mix of Lucifer and Judas, and so his intestines have been cut out and they're like hanging, they're like wrapped around the demon. And whoever made this movie like took a look at it and he's like, oh, he's super buff, got it. And he gave him like a 6-pack. And he made his arms gigantic.
Yeah.
And I was like, why the fuck is he so buff? And then I looked it up, I was like, oh, he thought his intestines.
Oh, we're a 6-pack. I didn't even catch that.
I was amazed how buff the demon. I was like, Pazuzu, put me up with your fucking routine, baby. I want to get that buff.
Yeah. What's your routine?
It's like the
And
ripped Jesus breaking off the cross. That needs to be the verses
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I crucified
my
him.
note literally says, "Why is the devil statue so hot?" And then, okay, but one of my favorite things about this movie, it's something that's very rarely done, but it should always be done. The British Army are fucking assholes, and they're the bad guys of the entire
Yeah.
movie. Like, everyone hates them.
I know the colonizers.
It's
Fuck them.
Yeah, they're even like every British officer looks like a fucking Death Star uniform. Like, yeah, they all have that snooty look about them. And they're like, these savages kill them, and it's like a baby. It's like, Jesus, guy, you have to make them
yeah,
fucking
it's
evil. I think
It's
that's cool.
I
Yeah.
like that part whenever like there's a part where there are like some tribal people that come like a shaman to try and like exorcise this kid, and
I like that.
I like that they like they let the whole thing kind of go. Like
Mhm.
there wasn't like I thought that they were gonna like have like some like British people like bust in and be like, you guys gotta stop this. But it
Yeah.
was cool that like it was the demon that scares away like even like the fucking magic shaman. Like,
Yeah, like even they couldn't do it. Well, and that's
Yeah,
an
it was
interesting
cool.
scene, and it brings up a very good point. So in that scene, they're like holding him down, and they're like doing
Yeah.
this ritual, and they're trying to cleanse his soul, but they're also going to murder him. And so, like
Yeah.
the guy who has the kid, he has him like that, and then you see his hands go back, and his fingers
Yes.
break.
Yeah.
All of that is practical, and it looks so
Yeah.
fucking good that
Dude,
it
Yeah.
makes the CGI look even fucking worse.
yeah, I know.
It's like the curse of like 95 to like 2010 is like every time they would do
I
like
know.
practical and CGI, the practical always looks good and the CGI is
Yeah.
always bad. You know,
Yeah.
it's a real curse, much
It
like
really
the
is.
Zuzu's curse.
It's a gift and a curse. And I will tell you that after the British get there, because eventually the British come, the British troops, I stopped taking notes because it does genuinely get super kind of interesting. Like, it doesn't ever really make sense, but it's paced so well that you're like, fuck yeah, what's happening? I don't know, but he's
Yeah.
fighting fucking monsters in the tombs. Like, okay, so there's a part where, so at the end, we're spoilers now. Go check this movie out. It's a lot of fun. It's not even
Yeah.
that long. There's a part at the end where they find out
It's bad, but it has a good ending. I should say. Give them the correct expectations.
the fucking hater has arrived, and someone should exercise your hating.
If for the first hour you're like, this is pretty bad, you're like, oh wait, no,
wait,
it's really
Okay,
fucking
you're
into it,
gonna
man.
like
The whole
you're
time.
you're gonna be confused, and then every once in a while there's gonna be like a CGI crow or a CGI hyena that's gonna make you laugh. It's gonna knock you right back in, baby.
Yeah, come on.
So then, like, there's like a part where they're like, he's like, they're driving past a village or like this graveyard, and they're like, oh yeah, they were the victims of a plague. And then Father Marin's like, who died? Or how many of them died? And then the guy's like, all of them. And then like later, he's like, wait, if all of them died, who buried them? And like the guy should have been like, I mean, someone. Like they eventually found out that they all died.
well.
They didn't just leave the bodies around. Like
and
no.
he sees that they burn their dead, so he's like, if all the dead have been burned, who's in those graves? And the graves are all empty, you know.
And it's also like, but again, if anyone was gonna come find the bodies, it would have been the British, and the British would have buried them in or in Greece.
Right.
Like it's just such a leap for Father Marin to make, but it makes for very cool lines. And by the way, every line that Father Marin has is like an action hero line. Like they're like, Father Marin, do you believe in God anymore? And he's like, he stopped believing in us a long time ago.
Yeah.
He's like Snake Plissken, basically.
Yeah.
He's like
Fucking
dead
dude.
inside. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very funny.
At one point, the lady's like, so why did you choose archaeology instead of religion? He's like, I guess I just wanted something real. And he walks away. It's like, fucking shit, dude.
It's like,
Me
hell
too.
yeah, bro.
14-year-old me was like, I'm questioning my faith
Yeah.
now.
We didn't have any crybabies like the last priest who couldn't stop crying about his mom.
Yeah, fuck that
We
guy.
got a fucking badass Indiana Jones priest. He's like kissing the girl. And the funniest thing, it's like, hey guys, this is a prequel. We know that what is going to happen by the end of this. And he's not going to be like any.
He's going to be a normal guy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a very straightforward priest.
Yeah.
No, and it's like, I don't know, to me, it's funny too, because once the demon, like Pazuzu or whoever it's supposed to be, or Lucifer himself, starts taking over, it's like it really like rockets to 11 because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
things are simmering between the tribe and the British, and then suddenly it's just them all out like killing each other,
Yeah.
and then turning on, like the British turn on themselves and start killing themselves, and then the warriors also start killing themselves. Everyone's just gone completely insane.
And if you
It's
think that if it's not filmed like a fucking Family Guy cutaway, then you haven't been paying attention to the tone that we're trying to convey
it's,
in this
it
film.
is it's basically filmed like a bad grindhouse, but
But see, and that's the other thing, like, because they find out that, like, oh, this is where Lucifer fell to earth when God banished him from heaven. Again, that's a very cool idea, but they don't really play with it enough for it to matter. So it's like,
yeah.
let's just have a line that sounds cool, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay. And then, like, it's so funny because they have the scene where, like, the alien scene where they put a gun on Paul Reiser, where he grabs a priest and he's like, tell me the truth about what happened. And then the priest is like, oh, no, we actually believe that this is a cursed church. We just wanted to see if that's real. Like, we don't have a conspiracy. Like, we believe it, and it happened to happen. Like, weird.
We were right. Fuck.
It'd be like if in Aliens are like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, I mean, we knew you guys were going to die. That's why we told you that from the beginning. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And so I think it's funny. I think it's a hilarious. And then, like, okay, so you find out that it's the girl who's possessed.
That's the twist, because you think it's the
Yeah.
child again, but it's the nurse, the
Right.
sexy nurse.
And I will say, she does a really good job of playing that character. Like, she tells Father Mary, she's like, don't you want to fuck me anymore? And I was like,
Yeah.
she's having fun. She thinks she's playing an Evil Dead demon.
She is a deadite. She is like swinging
Yeah.
like a bat from the cross. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
I do love too. It's funny because they also do this in The Exorcist 3, where they just basically bring in some bullshit priest with like 5 lines to just immediately fail.
right.
And you
Yeah.
later you later find that his like chest has been punched through, and it's like, oh, a deadite would do that, not
Not
the Exorcist demon.
only did the devil pull out his heart, he hung him from a rafter in a Saw style like haunted
Yeah, like
house.
not like a crucifix, like on his side. Yeah.
And so he just drops him together, like, "Ugh." And then Father Marin's like, oh, this is bad. And then he like drops him, and then he just kind of gives him the last right. And by the way, like nothing really like Father Marin. So all this stuff is happening, but before all this demon stuff happens, like there's still no real hints as to what's going on. But Father Marin just gains his religion, and there's no real like why did this happen or like
I know.
Yeah, he's like, oh, demons are real. I believe in God again. Let's roll.
Yeah.
Cocking his shotgun, basically.
And then oh yeah, so then like and the funniest part, so like he puts on the priest and then the girl is like running at him like this from like 40 feet away, and he's just like saying he's like reading the Bible with the little kid, and then like as she gets to the end, she just goes
Straight up Bugs Bunny ass, like boy oi 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 oi. Like she
And-
even like crumples that way. I love
and
it.
not only that, but like I will say one of the cool things is like at the beginning Father Marin like does the holy water crossing on his head, and when she reveals herself to be the demon, he fucking headbutts her and burns her with the cross.
Oh yeah.
I was like, fuck yeah, bro, never thought of that before.
Creativity, man.
So then he saves her, and you're like, oh, that's why he gained his religion, because he saved this lady. And
Right.
then, for no reason, the back of her head explodes very slowly, and she's like, "Other men!" And then, like, her head just explodes, and it gets all bloody, and then she just dies. And he's
Why
like
did
holding her. Huh?
Why did that happen?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It like not only does it not make any sense in the story, it doesn't make any sense in his arc, because it's like, why would you continue to believe in God after he just like did a fucking prank on you at the end there?
I think
That's
it was
not
very
like
much
Exorcist
like,
lore. Like
oh,
once the
sh-
demon's gone, you win.
Yeah.
but
That's
like
not how it works.
I think it's like, oh, if she's still around, their like unresolved sexual tension is to go somewhere. But if she dies, he has to like carry on.
Oh, so they just had to kill her somehow.
I mean, I don't agree with it, but I think that's the point.
No,
can
she
see
should
that
have
logic.
lived, and then he
They might
should
have
have been
gotten
like, yeah, he should have been like, I love you, but I love the Lord more. And she's like,
Right.
I understand.
The Lord needs my dick more than your pussy.
Yeah.
The fact that she's also a Holocaust survivor is makes the whole thing a little tasteless too.
Yeah, and not only that, but like, and see, that's another interesting thing because, like, not to be like offensive, but there was a point where you would meet someone who's a Holocaust survivor, and like, because now I think of a Holocaust survivor, you think of a very old person.
Right.
But there was a point where you met a Holocaust, and they were like our age or younger, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
That's
oh
like the
shit, that's
50s,
fucking devastating. Like, I don't know, that was like like, there's so many points where like you shouldn't have the tone you have, but
Yeah.
they just like go with it anyway, and it almost like feeling like this movie feels like a grindhouse for sure, like almost like offensive
absolutely.
for the point of just being offensive, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's what it
devil
is.
nun slayers or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very much that. It's
You know what was kind of funny though was that like all the World War II flashbacks felt a lot like the World War II flashbacks in Shutter Island.
Shutter, I know.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, I thought of Shutter Island too.
And I even thought about that when I saw it the first time. I was like, this feels like The Exorcist. Marty,
Oh,
what are
really?
you doing? Yeah.
Unlike that, but I will say I don't think Shutter Island's that good of a movie. Maybe
Yeah, it's
his
okay.
worst.
The
Maybe.
I like
fuck
it.
is this hater? Like,
Yeah,
But-
I would give it like a 7 or an 8.
yeah.
I mean, his
Oh, no,
worst.
it's
His worst is a 7. Come on,
It's
he's
his
the best.
it's his only A movie instead of a fucking
Greatest
A
living
plus.
director.
God damn.
But
Hater movie.
I was a 7 or I don't know. But anyway, the World War II scenes in that are the best scenes in that movie, like by far.
No.
Like they're amazing.
Way no.
They're cool.
The best
Um,
scenes in that movie is where he goes to that basement that's another building that it makes no sense why it's so dark in there. That's the best part. Fucking scary.
When he meets fucking Jackie Earl Haley, he's
yeah.
all fucking skinny. That
I
was
didn't
so
He meets Elias
It
Koteas.
just it doesn't
Yeah.
click. It just doesn't click. But
Yeah, hater of the year over here. Okay,
this
buddy.
isn't the Shutter Island podcast.
Why don't you write a GQ article about how fucking Marty should go back to making Marvel or whatever?
I would like to see his take on Blue Beetle. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
but no, I would say the World War II stuff in this is maybe the worst. But like, it's so bad.
And
It's so
see,
Nazis executing people.
It's like the kids they look like kid models, which is very distracting.
Yeah. Everything
And
looks like a
B-
bit of porcelain.
Yeah.
Or like-
And B, he overlays the whole thing, which is funny because Marty does this too, but for real. He overlays the whole thing with CGI snow. And it's like, don't have the snow. Like, you don't need the snow, just don't have it.
Yeah.
They don't do the like, oh, a child's getting shot. Like, let's kind of tastefully cut to
Yeah,
the
they do
wide.
not.
They do the like
Yeah.
close up grindhouse exploding out the like. It's so like, come on, guys,
Okay.
don't do. They do that for like different
They really
like
do.
they don't-
like 5
they
different
don't-
12-year-olds die that way.
They don't do that. What they do is they do that shot, then it cuts to another angle,
Yeah.
then it cuts to behind, and then it cuts to her body falling in like space.
It's like a Kill Bill kill, but for a fucking 10-year-old
This is a
kid.
6-year-old child. Yes, it's a 6-year-old girl.
Just dying. And whenever they show, like, whenever he's supposed to pick out, like, the next people who are going to get executed, he starts picking, like, the old dudes.
Yeah.
And it cuts to, like, one old guy just going, like just disappointed.
He's just doing the Tim
Not worried
Robinson.
about
Aw.
Not me.
Yeah,
This is so weird.
this movie's insane. It's very insane.
And yeah, and it's so, I don't know, it's such an entertaining film. It's like, because the whole time you're like, what the fuck has happened? Like, why don't you know how to make this movie? But like, it keeps going. Like, it never stops being as ridiculous as that is at the beginning. It gets more ridiculous. So you
Yeah.
kind of like start to give it credit. Like, hey, this movie fucking.
I know.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, you're like they shouldn't have done this, but I'm almost impressed that they did. You
Yeah.
know?
They're
Yeah.
shooting. They fucking did it.
Also, okay, I'll leave you with one quote from Father Marin. He says, "Having orgies, including goats, doesn't make them possessed. Simply horny and inventive."
Yeah.
He delivers every line. Like, that's every line in that movie is like that. Like fucking Steven
This is-
Seagal, like fucking action.
This is going to be
It's
such
so
a different
good.
tone when we do the other one
Can't,
next week.
can't wait for Paul Schreider's fucking psychological mess. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's not gonna be this.
his
You know what?
slow
Honestly, I
burn.
think really carries this movie for me is like I didn't really know who Stellan Skarsgård was back then. Like
Oh
I'd probably
yeah,
seen Good Will Hunting, but I had no idea that was the same guy. But now that he's like such like an iconic dude, it's like he like just him being in the movie was like good enough. It was like you're fucking
yeah,
right, so I'll watch whatever you're doing. Like that,
yeah. He is
his
great.
reputation now is like something that hit me a lot harder this time.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, he's a great actor. I agree.
he's
Yeah.
good. He's good in everything, especially in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
He's so handsome.
Oh yeah.
He has a line in that movie that's like I just think of that performance and that
Uh,
line reading like all the time.
On the count of 3, let's all say if we'd sleep with him.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd be like, why don't you bring your son?
They all float
Just
down.
invite your son down.
um,
Yeah, but well, thank you guys. Next week we're gonna cover the same movie but very differently.
Dominion.
Yeah, Dominion.
I,
A
I love
prequel to
too that
it.
it's called one's called Exorcist, the beginning, and the other's called Dominion, the prequel to the Exorcist. Like
Yeah. What?
they're so insane. Like that's such an
And
insane title.
it's also
scheme.
like like colon the beginning, Dominion, and a prequel to The Exorcist. Like
Yeah.
they were like having the studio at gunpoint. It's like if you have one generic or like one creative word in that title, you're gonna blow
Yeah.
your brains out.
Yeah.
Let's get
The only-
Sufjan Stevens here to title this fucking film.
Yeah, it should have been called Dominion Exorcist to prequel to The Exorcist Forever. The Last
Back to
Night.
back. Just dance for.
But yeah, fun times, guys. We'll see you next week on the Bomb Squad. Let us know if you've seen this movie and what you think. We'd love to hear those thoughts. And go see Clown Show. It's a cool little short. Perfect for Halloween.
And go see The Exorcist Believer in theaters because we
Do
need
it.
to support good cinema.